I think it's time to open it up for questions. There was a couple of items in the chat. Paul Morgan, you had a question to Russ about dimensioning.
Yeah, Paul, I answered the question there. Do you want me to show you?
Please, yes, if you would.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So let's quickly go back into a sketch mode, and I'm going to quickly put in a center-based object, okay? So I'll do it on a rectangle, center point rectangle in there, and let's make it 30 by 50, and we'll come out of the sketch, and then we'll go into extrude, and we'll just extrude it out into a body. Okay, let's put on the dimensions so we can see them. Right, and there's our 2 dimensions. Now, if I alter the 50 on this one and click on it and change that to 100, it goes both sides. And that will apply if you've drawn things like a rectangle or a circle or a polygon using the center point. Now, if we go back into the sketch and instead we go back to what we drew earlier, let me just take that one out the way a minute because it's going to confuse. I want to go on the center. So if we go from the origin out to here and we go to there, and back to there, okay, and let's put some dimensions on it. Put that one on, and we'll call it 50, and we'll put that one on and call it 60, and we finish the sketch, and let's turn that body off a moment, and let's just put some depth to it so we can see what we're doing. Right. Now what happens now is if I go onto the front mode, we'll change this 60. Now I'm going to just move that across to there so you can see that point on there. So I'm going to go on there, I'm going to change that to 100. That point stays, it goes that way. If I change this one to 100, it goes up. If it's about the center line and the line or the shape has been drawn to a center point and you extend those dimensions or reduce those dimensions in solid mode, it will go either side. If it's not done, if it's been free drawn like this, the line will be extended from its origin. And if you remember so if we go back into the sketch for this one, we can see the origin was that 100 and I drew that line, then I drew this line from there to there. So the origin of this line was down here. So when I changed the dimension on the solid, it kept the origin and extended the line away from the origin or would bring the line closer to the origin. Does that help, Paul?
That explains it well, Russ. Thanks very much.
Okay, stop share. Next question.
Steve Lomax, is moving a face of an object the same as extruding that face?
I started to answer that when Malcolm finished his last one and passed it back to me. Basically, yes. Malcolm may know more than me. I tend never to use copy for face. There's no point because as far as I can see, if you're copying a face, all you can do is extrude it or cut it in. Like you can't spin it or turn it or do anything else with it, unless Malcolm has looked into it a bit deeper than me.
Only in the fact that I think the question is moving a face of an object the same as extruding that face? The simple answer to that question is, yeah, it is the same. Apart from in your timeline, you will have a move, not an extrude.
Yeah.
That doesn't technically make any problems. All I can say is move is something that you should use the least possible. Okay, don't use it as much as I did today because you will end up long term with errors, and I would say extrude will be a better option for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Brian Waits, you've got a question there. Copy body versus copy within a sketch. You want to elaborate on that?
Yes, John. I raised an issue with Russ and he answered. I'd had problems doing copies within a sketch and Russ suggested copying the bodies instead. I can see now I need to go away and play with it a bit more, having seen what I've learned tonight. But if a body is joined to another body, once you've done that, you can't go back and change the original body or change the copies of it. Whereas if you do it in a sketch and you copy the images within the sketch, if you change the dimension of the first item in the sketch, all the others which are copies of it will change with it. I don't know whether that explains myself very well.
Yeah, no, I follow you, Brian, and we did talk about this. I think just to very quickly is the point I was making at that time was that if you, I think, you know, seats in a carriage sort of situation or multiple ones, if you copy the body, if you copy the sketches, you end up with X number of bodies. And if you want to change something on it, you've got to change all of them. Whereas if you've got one sketch and you copy the bodies, when you change one, the master body, the others will follow suit. Now, I think perhaps where you're getting confused is if you've got two bodies together and you want to edit one, you can still do it because you've got to make sure those they are two separate bodies and then you can treat them separately. That's why I mentioned earlier, you've got to watch it when you're adding stuff, that you don't join it, that you do keep them as separate bodies. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Sorry. Yes, it does make sense. But when you export to an STL, if you've got lots of separate bodies, you've got to start highlighting every single body.
No, you haven't. You haven't. I don't want to go off subject at the moment because this got raised earlier, and I think it seems to me that a number of people don't quite know how to export to STL. Now, I don't mean that in a nasty way at all, because there's more than one way of exporting, and sometimes one of the ways of exporting, you don't seem to be able to highlight more than one body, but you can. There is a way to do it. It's an item we have to cover. So whether we cover it now or later, I don't know. It might. Well, no, we're not going to cover it now because it takes too long. And I've got to show Malcolm how to do it first.
So the only thing I would say, Brian, for you, one thing I didn't cover is maybe what you can do within a sketch. So if it's all right, John, I'd like to just explain a couple of bits because I didn't go into that in any great detail.
Just before you start, Malcolm, if Brian wants to get in touch on a one-to-one, I'll show him what to do with the STLs.
Because I think, Brian, what one of the things you might want to research is certainly rectangular patterns in that case. Because one of the things with a rectangular pattern is if you alter the first part of the sketch, it will then follow along on the pattern. But that's, again, a command on a completely separate thing. And we don't want to jump backwards and forwards and confuse people. But just going back to sketching. So with the move command, I said that you can move sketch parts, so you can sketch objects. You have exactly the same control here, but you don't have create copy here on this particular piece. But if you select that and you do Command C, Command V, try that again because it didn't want to do it. Why don't we want to do that? It would help if you had the sketch open, Malcolm, wouldn't it? That would help. So let's have the sketch open in the first place. So if we highlight that one, Command C, Command V, you still have these options where you can move it across. So you can make copies. The other thing with once the sketch is open, depending on what you select determines what you can do. So if you want to make a circle smaller, you can just drag it up and down. If you want to move the angle of this line, if I select the line there, the line will move just as a line. But if I select just the end, I can rotate that line. And then again, you can also change parts. And it is dependent upon what you select, determines how it will move. So the best thing you can do is do like this, create loads of funky shapes, and then start moving them around. And you can still use the copy and paste in sketch parts.
Can I just cut in a minute, Malcolm?
Yep.
Not disagreeing you, but you can copy a sketch. It's not grayed out.
Yeah, sorry, no, that was just because I was doing it without opening the sketch.
Oh, right, sorry. Okay.
I was being a donut, that was all. So
I just tried it. I thought, hang on a minute, have I got something wrong?
I
Okay.
just it's again doing things on the fly, in it. You think, oh, why is this not coming up? And it's not coming up. It won't come up.
No,
There's certain things you can do without opening the sketch.
exactly.
Realistically, you need to open the sketch to do the proper lot of moving and copying. And
You had me thinking then.
I know it's a lot of worry, isn't it?
Yeah. There's one from Andy Robb on there, John.
Yes.
The answer to that is yes. You can loft anything to anything, really. Now, quite often, sometimes when you do it, like when you're doing the sweep command, and you remember on the sweep command when I showed you that when you were copying the sweep perpendicular and you're going around a curve, you get an error warning. It's the same with all the tools. You can virtually do anything from loft to loft. Sometimes you will get an error if you're trying to loft something and crisscross geometry and so forth. We can't cover those eventualities because we don't know when they're going to crop up, really. But basically, yes, there's no restriction on the loft command in the question that you're asking.
Yeah, the thing I was trying to get at is if a square and loft up to a square, I end up with straight lines touching each corner. It goes from bottom right square to top right square, and they're straight lines.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, to be honest with you. Let's have a quick look, and you can talk. You can just talk me through on it, if that's all right, John.
Because if you draw a 40 mil square,
No, let's very quickly then. You can see my screen again. No,
not yet.
yes, you can now. So we draw a square of 40 mil there.
Yeah.
Now,
And then on a plane above it, say 50 mil above.
okay, so therefore we come out of that and we go into construct offset plane.
Yeah.
Let's get the right plane there, and we'll go up 50 mil. Is it you
50 mil, yeah. And then on that plane, on the center,
Yeah. Same size. Yeah.
do a 10
Oh, 10.
10 rectangle, 10 by 10 rectangle.
Yeah. And then
Now, if you loft that, you'll get
loft.
straight lines.
Well, yes, of course you will.
But that's what I'm saying. But how can I make those lines curved? Normally, we'd put a rail in. But
Okay.
you've got
Well, you in what way? You mean curved that way?
like curved like a pagoda, like this shape, like the shape of a pagoda roof. It's steeper at the top and then swings out its bottom.
What you're looking at there is going back into sketch mode on that one, and you're talking in terms of putting it in. And I'll do one so you can see what I can do more than one. So you put those curves in there. Now, I don't know.
Internal curves.
Pardon?
The curve goes in, not out.
Okay, then. So
And I
exactly.
understand you can do that with one rail, but it was how do I make those identical for each of them?
Well, basically, you can measure you've got to put dimensions on the rail, haven't you?
Okay, doke.
So if that's the point on the arc. Now, in one sense, I suppose, you could use an arc, but you'd have to dimension it and then copy the dimensions. I don't know. Hang on a minute. Let me just try something very quickly for you. It might work. I'm not sure. So we're going in there now. Enter whether you can use. You can't, no, you probably can't use the copy and cover because it's on a different plane then.
Yeah, that's right. Right. That's
There,
important.
there is, I know what you're trying to do in that sense, but there is a better way of doing it, and it's not this way.
Okay.
But that's for another topic, maybe.
Excellent. I'm quite happy with it, Russ. Thanks for
Okay.
that. Cheers.
Yeah, we will. I think towards the end of the course, then it may be Malcolm and I will spend an evening doing little tricks and tips and so forth on these sort of. At the moment, we're going through the buttons, but also I think what some of you may need is for us to sort of do a few bits of what ifs, as it were.
Okay, I see Julian Mallard, you've had a question there about Malcolm to do some hexagon on a big circle. Do you want to, have you seen that one, Mal?
Yeah. And that's quite a simple answer, that one. As far as I'm aware, what you're asking is how do you move two sketches, e.g. the hexagon, onto the big circle so that their centers are concentric? The answer is you can't, technically. And I'll explain to you why. And this is a good learning thing really on Fusion. Fusion actually gives you loads of clues. So that's talking about constraints, and we're not going into constraints at the moment, but just to answer your question, if I open that sketch, there is a concentric constraint, but if you read the description, when you hover over any of the constraints or any of the buttons or anything, it will give you help. And the help there is the concentric. It constrains two or more arcs, circles, or ellipses to the same center point. The problem is, hexagon or pentagon or whatever way you want to look at it, it ain't an arc, a circle, or an ellipse. But there is a way of obviously of doing it, and that's just to use the coincident constraint, which constrains the position of, oops, come on, hover over it. Be an idiot. Constrains the position of 2 points or a point and a line or curve together. So what we could do then, and this is what I think you're asking, can I do that one to be concentric with that one? Which the answer is yes, technically. And as you increase that circle, that would then stay in the center of that one. You'd still need some more constraints because there's technically nothing to stop that from rotating. So does that answer the question?
Okay, so it's a constraint that you do, and you can't actually move it on top of it and get it to the centers to align.
Oh
just
yeah,
by moving it.
Yeah.
So will it snap to the center then?
Yeah, so let me just go that back. So obviously you can use a move command. So if we do move, so we can select that object there.
You're not showing anything?
Oh, sorry, I shall. Right, let's go back to that. Yes. So with the move command, this is where if we go in this sketch and then we select move, because if you remember, move will move sketch objects, we can select that point there, and we can go point to point. So the origin point is there, and the target point is there, and that will technically do exactly the same without constraints. But going back to what I said, move is not the correct way to do things. There are better ways to do it. And with that one, a constraint would be a better option. But yes, you can do it with the move. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
And I think the last question we've got is from Mike Wu. Do you want to jump in, Mike?
Thanks, John. I found the stuff that Malcolm did really quite fascinating. It is quite complex, and I find that I think that if I emulate it by looking at the video, yes, I will learn, the way how to do ABC using the options. But I thought I would learn better if Malcolm were to set me a problem. and I will then use whatever options available in order to achieve the solution that Malcolm has set. I know it's a lot more work for Malcolm, but I think I can learn better that way. I'm not sure whether Malcolm agrees with that.
Totally. And it will take me less time than it takes Russ to do whatever it was Right. I thought about that. And there you go. Anybody that wants to take this challenge, here's one for you.
Quite happy issuing you with homework.
Yeah.
It is homework, yes. It is
You
homework.
want homework? Right. Okay. I thought about this and I thought, yeah, no, actually, that's a really good shout, Mike. I like that one.
Yeah.
So there you go. Produce that and find the most elegant way.
Yes.
Russ will know how to do that, but find an elegant way. Watch my move thing.
Yes.
Not the numbers and the hands and everything.
Right. Yes, of course.
But just the actual outline of that.
Mm-hmm.
Find the most elegant and time efficient way of doing that.
Yes, and to copy all those. Yes, indeed. There would be a challenge.
Not a challenge though.
Answers on a postcard.
It's actually, like, okay, for Russ and I, that is an easy thing to draw technically. But what we're asking then is an elegant way of drawing that.
Yes.
Not drawing it, because there is a clue in. You would need the hexagon would be a good starting point.
Yes. Indeed. That's a nice clue.
Yeah.
I think that you will be, better to learn, and you will stick in the memory better by actually solving a problem.
Yeah, well, I think that would be an interesting shape to produce as a sketch, because it's a little bit of the rotation and the different bits that I showed. I think you could make all of that by using the move command.
Yes. Oh, good.
And we will look forward to your results next week.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure everybody would agree to do some homework, but anyway, that's my thought.
It is not compulsory. Okay, just there will not be tests at the end.
If we have to suffer, Malcolm, they have to suffer.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit the lessons, they only take an hour on a Sunday, but they take a little bit longer to research.
You take a bit longer during the week to make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so the issue is genuinely, I had to go back to Autodesk because I found an error in their documentation. So that's the level of research that we try to do to make sure that we are showing you the right way, not our lazy way of doing it.
And of course, we've got an added problem because since we showed you the sweep command last week, an upgrade has added another operation to it, which is extremely useful. So it's trying to keep up with it as well.
But either or, even if you go back to videos that are 7, 8, 10 years old, there is still relevant information in there. It's just that there's probably 20 different ways of doing exactly the same thing in Fusion. And it's just, there are different ways, and sometimes there are slightly better ways. And it's really dependent on what the outcome you want at the end